everyone today. My name is Kibidia Junku. I want to welcome you to the Bierman Gallery here at the Frederick Douglass Isaac Myers Museum. We're that third floor gallery, and it is just a little known treasure. But where we are sitting on the pier that was where the business for Isaac Myers was located. He was a boat builder. He was a boat repairman. He was the employer of Frederick Douglass before Frederick Douglass manumitted himself later on. So this kind of is hallowed ground for us. It is a location owned by Living Classrooms, but it is embodied by community. The work that I curate in this gallery is social justice work. It's work that has meaning, that has resilience, that has purpose, that has messaging, that is about our past, our present, and our future. It is about breaking ways and opening ways and creating pathways. Well, I'm not going to talk too much. As I said, I'm Kibidia Junku. I'm the curator for this gallery. But this exhibition that we're going to talk about today is entitled Resilience Unveiled. And it was curated by Black Art Today. So I'm going to move out of the way and make space for them to talk about this work, talk about this exhibition that's so excellently curated, and invite a few artists to talk about their work as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you to everyone that's here with us this afternoon. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate it. I'm Lisa Clark. I am the Chief Operating Officer and Vice President for the Black Art Today Foundation. We're a 501c3 public charity based out of Upper Marlboro, Maryland. And our mission, to sum it up in a few words, is preservation of culture through the arts. And we are focused on our 90% of what we do. We support visual artists of Black and African descent. We have artists throughout the United States and have the privilege of having one artist in Senegal. Unfortunately, none of his work is in this particular exhibit. However, we have some upcoming exhibits for 2024. You'll see more of our artists' work there. And again, this is our closing reception, our final artist talk. And I just want to say thank you so much to Kavivi for giving us this opportunity, giving us space in places where sometimes we can't imagine where we're going to be every year or like every other month. It's like, can you do this? And we're like, what? We got this opportunity, we're not seeking it. But it's always been our goal to collaborate with Kavivi. We've been talking about it for years, and she presented the opportunity, and we jumped at it. And we co-curated this. We came to her with a concept, and we were throwing around some words and the location, and said, okay, once it all came together, we came up with Resilience Unveiled. And and hopefully if you look at each piece, but if you look at the exhibit as a whole, you feel that when you walk into the space, that the artwork here represents Resilience Unveiled, especially for our forefathers, our ancestors, because we are survivors. We are the part of the people that survived that Middle Passage. And that in and of itself is resilience. And all those people that fought, and died, but also overcame. This exhibit, the space, these artists, we all represent that. And we hope that you enjoy the work that's here and continue to work with us and follow us because we plan on doing bigger, better things as years come along, because we're growing as an organization, and we have some phenomenal artists on our roster. I think we have the strongest, I would say, we do have the strongest collective, cohort, whatever you want to call it, in the state of Maryland. I think I can stand on that.
All right.
So without further ado, we're going to open the floor for the artist talk. I will be introducing the artist. First artist is Mr. Jay Dara. Raise your hand, Jay. Second artist is Dr. Jamoja Smalls. Dr. Harriet Smith. And the lovely, last but not least, Maria Antoinette. We're going to start with Mr. Jay Dara, and he is going to introduce himself and give a short description of the type of artist you are, and a little bit about your background, and we're going to pass it along.
Okay. My name is Jay Dara, as you heard, and I call myself a modern day impressionist. I do paintings of portraits, but I use I use multiple colors, multiple layers of paint that I layer to create my images. I also like to have some, I like to have some texture in my work also. So I often try to pick the thickest paint I can find just to make it thicker. I really like texture and color. And I've been painting more than 40 years now, most consistently for the past 14 years. But I've been painting, at least drawing since I was a kid. So this is my passion. As of December 21, I'm doing this full time. So I can retire from my day job and doing this full time.
My name is Umonja, and artist talks are always weird for me, just because, don't mind me. I'm a multidisciplinary artist. Whatever I can get my hands on is what I do. So if it's trash, if it's glass, if it's metal, wood, paint, I like to find ways to combine it, and I like to focus on layers. Most of my work, in fact, all of my work speaks about relationships, and I like things that are layered in a way that most of us are, where we see something on the surface and we don't know how many other things are happening behind the scenes. So I like to focus on ways of taking something that's beautiful, like a piece of beautiful and carved fabric, and cutting it all apart, and then reimagining all those pieces in different ways together. Because life, right? It starts, for some of us, it starts off beautiful. I'm not going to say it for everybody. And life be life, breaks it all apart, and it can be put back together beautifully in a different way. And I like to kind of look at ways to reimagine us moving along a timeline that we call life. What else was I supposed to talk about?
That's it.
Okay.
My name is Harriet, and I'm an abstract painter. And I think my motivation comes from my photography hobby. I started falling in love with photography as an adult, and also at that same time collecting art. But what I found is that the type of art I was really attracted to, I couldn't find, because I was really looking for layered, textured art pieces. And I thought, why not try your hand at creating them? And that is sort of the impetus to get started with that. I find that I really do have a vivid imagination. I can look at colors, I can look at structures, and I think just really having an eye for photography has helped to sort of build what I like to do in terms of creation. So when I talk about layers and textures, I like paintings that look like they're moving, and that's why I'm really drawn to that. My medium is oil painting, that's my preference, but I have tried my hand with acrylic and other materials such as plastic and even fiber that you use for drywall. And I found that out of that, some interesting pieces came alive. So I'm looking to see what other innovative things I can think about in this calendar year. I'm sort of looking towards what's going to be my mantra for next year. And I usually think about that at the end of the year, and that'll drive some more artist creations.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. My name is Marie Antoinette. Want me to sing?
No.
Oh, speak up. Okay. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Marie Antoinette, and I've been told that I'm a mixed media artist. So I guess that means I like to try a lot of different things. I'm self-taught, so I'm on a journey, and I am having the time of my life. Please believe me. So with this exploration and this growth and this community, I have met myself over and over again. So the new me's are creating, reimagining, and there are things inside of me that are still unveiling and unfolding. And so I just look forward to being able to continue to do that and be able to express myself in an authentic and thought-provoking way.
So we can start with you. Okay. You have the mic. So let's talk about your creation for Brazilians Unveiled. First, what does Brazilians Unveiled mean to you? And how did it influence the piece that you selected for this exhibit? That's going to be everybody's question.
So when I think of resilience, I had a thought earlier in the year because I used to always say that I would tell my daughter, I have a 25-year-old, that I thought she was so resilient. That was always my go-to. And then I decided I wasn't going to say that anymore because when I think of resilience, this isn't a bad thing, but I think of how we don't, as people tell me, don't necessarily, the choice to thrive and to be resilient, for the most part, can be innate. So when I think of resilience, I think about DNA and what's encoded in us and how that translates. So when I think about resilience and I think about it being unveiled, that can be in many ways and not necessarily a lot of times ordinarily like a strength. It can be just a survival, a coping mechanism. So that's what I think about when I think of resilience unveiled.
For me, resilience unveiled sort of symbolizes being able to uncover or expose your strength, your character, those things that are motivating you. For instance, the pieces that I did for this exposition, one was really customized specifically, and that one is titled, Let Your Life Speak, because I think of that as representing the intentionality to be very, very clear on what you want to do as a person and how you can make sure that you frame your actions to the highest standards to do that. And the second piece that I did, actually I did this earlier in the year and I kept it for myself, but I felt that it aligned with the exhibition theme, and that is Sordid Thoughts. And when I did a little bit of digging on Isaac Mayers and Frederick Douglass, I really thought about the times that they came through and still really being in touch with who they are, what they wanted to do in the unsurmountable environment of being oppressed and injustice. And Sordid Thoughts, I said, there's probably times where you really have to take a pause from what you're doing and then at some point unpause that. So I felt that it was just so appropriate. Like I said, I created it earlier in the year, but it felt that it really resonated with the theme of the exhibition?
Resilience. When I think about it, I work a lot with people with major behavioral challenges, and outside of just our culture, there's I guess, a big focus on like the Black girl magic, that we always get through the situation, that we're resilient all the time. So a lot of times the concept is one where, kind of like a badge of honor, you say you're resilient. And I like to think about it more of something, and I like the title, Unveiled, that it emerges through the experiences that we have in life. The piece that I created is a figure that's running and bursting through barriers. And I think when I just kind of conceptualize what it means to stand and be resilient, it often means action. You're not just standing and persevering, and as the scripture says, like having done all stand, which kind of feels still, that you have to press through and break through and move into places where people say that you can't go. And the concept of like kind of breaking through these caution tapes and boundaries and barriers is what I wanted to demonstrate.
When I think of resilience, I think of having the ability to bounce back, or going through adversity and landing on your feet. And when I did the piece over here, Buffalo Soldiers, and I was thinking about right after slavery, Black people were free and Black men were free, but their options were limited, very limited. So I think this 1866 is when all the soldiers that were in the Civil War, they sent them out west to the American Indian War, and the Indians coined the name Buffalo Soldiers for them because of their hair, texture of their hair, and the fierceness in their fighting. And to me, when I was thinking of this piece, I was thinking we once were warriors in Africa, and this gave Black men the ability to kind of speak to the warrior mentality, and it gave them some dignity.
Stay right there. Next question. What are your biggest artistic influences?
I'd have to say my contemporary peers, and I'm really impressed with a lot of my peers right now, the grounds they're making in the art world, and it's it's we kind of depend on each other to get to get through and get to the next step. So I really look up to my peers.
Influences life. A lot of the times when I'm creating, it's kind of happenstance. It's through real situations that people are talking about, things that I'm experiencing. I do have that real world job, and working with people who are in crisis, living and trying to piecemeal medicate services and try to move in a way that they're able to support children and adults with developmental disabilities. And that's a very layered, cumbersome, kind of moving process. So I would say a lot of my work is influenced even just in the experiences that I'm having and living. Outside of that, really truly inspired by the uniqueness that is each artist and what they bring and how their pieces emerge, what they talk about. And I'm just always amazed that there's so many different voices in how people create. So I guess I'm just inspired in general from that.
I have to say that I don't have one place where inspiration comes from. It's sort of multifaceted, and it's just being around other artists, being in this type of environment, as well as musicians. I mean, every piece that I create, I have a playlist that usually I've identified one artist and I listen to their work until the piece is created. So it really is a culmination of just whatever I'm thinking about at the time, how I'm inspired from other artists, my peers, and that artist who is singing or playing an instrument in my ear as I'm creating pieces.
I have to say, I think for me, I have a muse, and that's my daughter. She inspires me on so many different levels. I'm sorry. She inspires me on so many different levels, and I think that one of the most important things for me is for her to see me as an artist or a creative, as opposed to just being a mom, because I was a mom, just per mom for so long. So this gives me a voice to show her the other side, the resilience unveiled in me. Oh, I'm holding on to it. I'm trying to give it away.
So, how can your work affect societal issues? So what do you think when people see your work or there's something going on in society, something major? How do you think your work can influence, can add voice to it, especially if you are either opposed of it or you support it? How does it?
That's a good question. I think I can say that my work is intentional. If I do it, I'm making a statement. That's the point for me. And the piece that I did for Resilience Unveiled, it's a photograph that I took. I was on Kent Island. I took a day trip to Kent Island, and when we were, approaching the island, I started to just feel funny. I don't know, for lack of a better word. And the place that we ended up, there were a lot of ship pieces and wrecks, and it wasn't a junkyard. It was like a ship parts place, kind of, on the dock. And I started looking around, and I saw some things that resonated with me, but in a way that I felt translated what the ancestors may have felt in the particular tree that I took a picture of that day, and I call it Stranger Fruit, just reminded me of Nina Simone's song, the way that things were just hanging around that tree. And I felt that, I needed to acknowledge the triggers that are in the world for people of color sometimes that may not be noticed by others. And so to put a voice to that and to acknowledge that and to sit with that and to let that be, change the narrative and let it be a more powerful representation. So I always look to leave a message in a thought-provoking commentary, hopefully, with my work.
I wish I was that intentional all the time, but sometimes it really is about an energy that I can feel from different events, from current events, from interactions with individuals. But it really is sort of a fleeting phase, and I have even done work when my energy was really low, and also when it was extremely high. And I've learned that we are impacted by our surroundings and the things that we hear and see, regardless if we intend for that to happen. But one of the things I like engaging with individuals when I see them at exhibitions when my work is presented, and I always like to find out, what do they see? Because the interpretation is always different. And one of the things I find that's sort of imaginative of individuals is that they always see faces. And I think it's because my work is abstract. And a lot of people are always looking to find something. I think abstract all the time. So regardless, I know what I see, but I think individuals really do try to find something that is familiar, and they always will say that I can identify a face, or that looks like somebody that I met, or my uncle, or a coworker, and that's okay. I mean, one time someone said they saw Michael Jordan in one of my works, and I thought, wow. That wasn't intentional, but it is in the imagination of the recipient, and that's what I really appreciate.
I like what Harry just said, and, a lot of times in the work, what I hope is that the viewer, just like all of us, I guess, you want them to interact with your work, right? So I like that there's some aspect of you seeing yourself in the work. And because there's been a number of pieces that I created in the midst of my own turmoil, when Floyd was murdered, the process of cutting apart fabric and putting it in layers, and it took forever, and then I accidentally hit it and all the feathers fell off, and then putting it back. Like that process of having to keep re-experiencing something became a personal therapeutic moment, but also for others that then got to view it and got to hear that story. And I believe that it continues to have this conversation, that we can experience a painful thing, or our voices heard through what's being created. During COVID, I had a lot of weird situations where like somebody would take a picture and they said, "This is how I told my mom," and I love when young people do it, but "This is how I told my mom how I was feeling." And it was just a picture of a woman yelling, and it was colorful and had all these things coming out the mouth. But because the child couldn't really express their emotions to their parents, they were kind of shutting down or very irritable. That's how they told it. They showed the picture. So I'd like to believe that, the question was like, how does our work speak and move politically? I think that all of our work, we think about musicians, our hearts break when we hear certain songs where it tells our whole story, we have that feeling. I think some of the pieces that I create move people in that same way. So I think sometimes it's with intention, after a specific world event or experience, I might create something that I hope kind of resonates with the feeling of it. I expect somebody to feel like this is speaking to that event. But other times it's similar to what you were saying with energy. You're experiencing that energy, and it gets translated in the way that you create. And so and I'm kind of fluid with that. I want to be open to however that ends up showing up on the canvas, because my process is somewhat of a destructive one, taking things apart. It allows me to mentally process, and I believe that when others get to observe it and view it, that they're experiencing some of that feeling as well, whether it's angst, excitement, just trying to understand the complexity of what's been created and why it was created. And then, like Harriet was saying, I think we like to hear what the viewer says, and that it often, occasionally, and frequently will be something completely different than what we intended it to be. And I kind of like that. That's where you hear a different story. And I like to explore that more, because that's part of the whole artistic experience.
Okay, well, currently, I'm a little offended by Governor DeSantis, the governor of Arizona, governor of Texas, trying to tell us what our history should be. And as a history lover and as an African-American man, I'm really offended. And so a lot of my pieces right now are historical figures. I've done quite a few of some of my heroes and some of my sheroes. And I think as artists, it's part of our duty to reflect our culture and our history. So that right now, that's what I'm kind of focusing on.
Could we repeat that question?
I think I would love for you all to talk about how all of these pieces together speak to the theme of the unveiling of resilience, but not from the past, but in regard to today. Because if we know anything, we know that life is very much Sankofa. It is very much understanding the past so that we can interact and function in today, but we do that as a portal to our tomorrows, or in holding space for our tomorrows, or as you all talked about, being able to effectively affect dialogue about our tomorrows. So I just would love for you to talk about how you feel these pieces fit together to tell a story.
First of all, this space is beautiful, and to hear the history about this space really, it really means a lot to me. And to have these pieces in this space is, it's really uplifting also. And I mean, I could just look around and see strength and see resilience in the images and the stories that each of these pieces are telling. I mean, it's just a lot of strength and resilience, and unveiling is just to show the world, or show the viewers what we're doing here, what we're doing as artists.
It's questions like this that make me feel like I'm back on a dissertation panel. Like, I want her voice to come out on this side of the microphone. But I appreciate it because it really forces us to kind of think about not only what we're creating, because as artists, you know, it's all in my head, but having to articulate why I did it is a lot harder. That's why the artist talk is like, blah, 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 just like my art, you know. But I appreciate it just looking around the room, again, the strength of the pieces. I mean, there's some obvious themes that align with resilience and Frederick Douglass. But I also love just the fact that there are a lot of eyes in here. I pay attention to eyes. There was a period where, you know, eyes is all I could focus on. If they were closed, that was better. If they were open, I went into a whole different world. But seeing all these eyes, it's almost like there's a conversation happening. As you're looking at it, you're being told a whole story without words. And to me, resilience is a lot of that you're observing someone moving through a crisis. You're observing somebody still here after all of that. And you don't often get to have a conversation with them about the fact that they're still standing, but you're observing it and you hear it in how they move, if that makes sense. And so, in just looking at the pieces, it kind of, and they're all, and the way this gallery is kind of situated and curated, which is so beautifully done, we're at the center of it. You know, as you're walking around, you're at the center of all of this energy focused on, you know, basically a conversation back to you to say, this is who we are. That's what I really appreciate about how it's put together.
One of the things that I think about is sort of the collection of the effort that went into all of the works, and just even looking around the room is just, you know, a culmination of space, energy, influences, experiences, everything that each of us brings to being what we have to do. And like you mentioned, all the eyes, and as you're saying that, I thought, you know, I wonder what goes on when the lights are down and just the artwork is here by itself. Is there something that is sort of transcending, you know? And again, it is just the energy of having these individuals represented, whether it's figures, whether it's movement. I mean, even behind me, I remember at one point I was sitting out in the audience and just really thinking about the individuals behind me. You know, what are they doing? What were they thinking? What is their afternoon like? You know, who are they going to visit? I mean, just sort of a storyline, because I think the role of the exhibition is really to create a story. And as an artist, we are contributors. You know, we are the authors of a story. And I think Resilience Unveiled really produced a grand story. Another thought that came to my mind, I said, you know, this is something, I know that there's videos of this, but it really would be nice to be sort of like a video that goes viral, you know, on all the different social media platforms, because especially for our young learners, to make sure that they understand that there is a journey that individuals have gone through, the journey that we're all going through, and that they also are on that same path. So again, that's just my mind thinking in abstract terms, but how does this get out? Because it's beautifully laid and presented, And I know that today is the last day, but how do we capture that so that it can really keep the energy moving along?
That sounds like a challenge, but I think when I enter this room, I feel like I'm entering a sacred space. It feels very powerful to me when I look around at all the artwork, and it's a combination of all past, present, future. You see all of that. So you see the roads that have been traveled, and you see in the faces, the determination and the things that were done so that I would be able to have a seat in front of you today. It can be overwhelming too. And the magnificence and the majestic, these are the things that I feel when I look at the pictures and when I am just in the space. I think that it just resonates with my DNA, honestly, because I can relate on some level to everything that is presented here. So it's a wholeness. It's a wholeness. You okay? So, can I answer the question? Okay.
So at this time, we have any questions? At this time, we are going to open the floor to the guests and other artists to ask their questions.
Can I tell about my piece over here?
Yes, a little Brienne.
Thank
Let's
you.
talk about your little piece.
Okay, ask me a question. Ask me a question.
Tell us about your piece.
Okay, if you insist. There's a story. There's a story. This is my Frederick. And I have, whenever Black Art Today sends out what they're getting ready to do and what the thought process is, then I have to go into the thought process, right? So with the Frederick, I didn't want to present Frederick the way that everybody else presents Frederick. He's always stoic. And that was intentional. We know that was his plan, to be photographed the most all the time and looking his very best. But as a master cosmetologist, I went for the hair because I love hair things. So I used his speech. This is the meaning of the 4th of July to the Negro. And I used the speech as my collage in here. And he's still a work in progress because there's more to say. But the piece that I always like to do a companion piece, and I wanted to do the woman in the crowd, is what I call her. The one who is the supporter that came, gave her 3 cents or whatever she had in her pocket to support him on his journey, the unspoken, the unseen. So that's what that is. Okay, that's it. Yes, because I missed the deadline by 2 minutes, so, but that's okay.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Does the netting have any significance on the woman?
Yeah, that's another story. So, it does, it's the veiling of it, and that's the other side of Mr. Douglas. You sure you want to know? So, this is, the women that were in the background, and so in my mind, I also was paying homage to Anna Murray, the first wife. So that's what that's about. That's the whole thing. So it's going to be a series. Stay tuned.
No, actually, we talk about the people here to go around and ask questions to them. But go right ahead.
Can I just for everybody that is in the room, if you don't know, number one, Frederick Douglass was the architect of the selfie. If there are so many individual images of him, beautiful, wonderful individual images of him. He couldn't have known it at the time, but flash forward hundreds of years, he actually is the most photographed human being from that time, period. And he told his own story, much like we do on social media. We click and we tell the story. And if we think this from our perspective, right? And if you didn't hear the story, you pause and you get to hear it again and again and again. So his autobiographies, part 1, 2, 3, they are all different perspectives from him of his story with the nuance that he felt necessary in the moment, right? And he had several wives. He really did. And if anybody knows anything about relationships, what we do know is that there is complexity attached to relationships. And when relationships stay together, there's a certain level of complex energy. When relationships break apart, there's a certain level of complex energy. When relationships are followed by another relationship or more, there's a certain level of complex energy. And I think that that's beneath what Marie Antoinette is speaking to, that veiling.
Now, I have a question to one of the points
Thank you, Kavini. That's
Kavini
exactly.
just made. They talk about Frederick Douglass as being this so photographed. And I'm just wondering if anyone else had the same experience that I had, which is there seems to be just a small set of images of him that you can find, So I'm just wondering if, are there all of these other images that we just haven't seen, or is.
Most people weren't photographed at all. There was not, the technology wasn't the same. So it wasn't like everybody had a phone with a camera on it. And it wasn't like everybody had access to a photographer. That was a whole thing with a tripod and a dark room and and technology that really wasn't accessible to the masses, let alone to Black people.
So a lot is relative to the time.
Everything is relative to the time. So if you can find 5 images, that's 5 more than everybody else had.
But I know recently, I've seen more than I've seen, like, initially when you would always see the old man with the hair. But recently it seems like I've seen a lot more pictures of Frederick Douglass. And there was a documentary about him where they showed there were a lot of photos of him. But like you said, it's relative.
Right.
It's
A lot
relative
might
to
be
the
10,
time. Right.
a lot might be 10. It might be, it's going to be,
But I do think ways for those images to be recreated is right here, which brings us from the past to the present to the future. And I think as artists that we take things from the past and we recreate them up in here to be able to spit them out on a different level to reach a different audience that may not relate to the Frederick Douglass major picture of the past. I didn't even get into the reading because I couldn't see it far more. But as you described who it was, I automatically saw it. So it did what it's supposed to do. And I think that's kind of like how we bring resilience into fruition to now and to the future. That we take things that we've dealt with in the past and not recreate them, but recreate them so they can be understood for those of the present and more importantly, those of the future.
I wanted to comment on the fact that when I came in here today, there was a piece in here, and I was like, I walked around and looked at all of the pieces in here. And then there was this piece that I didn't see. I didn't see the Sankofa piece. I didn't see it. I don't know how I couldn't see it because I love that image. And it also speaks to the fact that there are a lot of images and stories that are hidden in plain sight kind of thing. Obviously, maybe y'all all saw that piece. Did everybody else see that piece except for me?
I had the same experience. I didn't see the piece until today.
And it's loud. It's very striking to me.
It was the light. That's why you see it today. It's different because it's overcast. And you got more of this light on on it, or a unnatural light spotlighting, opposed to a natural light that was drowning it out.
Yeah, and there were a lot of
That's what
people in here probably
Yeah.
clouding it up. But isn't that what we're talking about too? That until spotlight is on it, or somebody collects these stories to do a documentary, there's a lot of stories that a lot of people may know about or not, talent that's undiscovered, but it's right in our midst because the spotlight isn't on it. And sometimes we miss what's right around us because whatever, maybe it's that we were focused on the other thing, or like you said, the lighting was different. But there are all these important stories, and that's what just kind of resonated with what you said. And until you kind of engage with the artist to find out a little bit more, like had you not asked, well, why'd you put the veil on top of that? That sometimes we'll miss the additional hidden story, right, the more juicy parts of the story, because we just didn't get close enough to ask, or spend the time kind of interacting and find out. Were there some questions from the audience? Anybody?
Yeah, I would like to know what the resilience story for you, each of you individually as artists is. What is your resilience story as an artist? Being an artist, remaining an artist, becoming an artist?
I'm trying to see how the best way to put it in words. I think it really is about having the time to do it as often as I would like to. Because I find that when I do start creating pieces, I could spend almost a whole day. It actually, ends up being several days, but once you get started. But it really is a point to where I do have to stop myself because there's something else that I have to do, but just having the indefinite amount of time to be able to really focus on pieces. And sometimes I can do it readily for several weeks, and then there's times where I have to take a pause and then come back and pick it up. So I think the resilient part for me is feeling like, most things, the more you do it, the better you are, especially with your craft. And I always have that moment, especially when I have a pause, of thinking, okay, am I going to be able to generate that energy, creativity that I had? Even though I know it's there, but it is that thought that always pops into my mind when I'm coming back to a piece that I started a while ago, or when I'm creating something new. And once I get started, it's fine. But it is still being able to say, just go forward and to do it. And to me, that is being resilient, especially given the limited amount of time that I could really spend with my craft.
I'll take it and then I'll hand it to you. So I think resilience sometimes in not being chosen, like you think your work is something and then somebody says, no, not good enough, or I don't see it, or, I've been to shows like that, and it's like, huh? Like, the piece of cardboard with a torn edge got what? So, and then when you hear the story, I'm like, but nobody gets to hear that story, so I don't get it. But so sometimes that can be discouraging. I mean, I don't know how many of you have submitted for different things, but just sometimes getting the denial, thousands of people submitted and only 3 got, I don't care. So that part, right, where you have to remember who you are and why you're creating and what motivates you. If that's what's motivating, then yeah, it can be discouraging, but that I continue to move through because it's restorative and I feel refueled when I'm creating. So I would like to say there's some resilience as an artist in that.
Yes.
Actually, you stole my thunder. Because we can all relate to that. And I was going to say, just the nose, this is a tough business, and the nose that you get on constantly, but you have to remember, like you said, remember who you are and continue to press on. Pretty much.
Heavy sigh. I think he thinks too much. I think that for me, it's not an option. I have to create. So taking those pauses, which I have to force myself to do, and so I have a lot of inward, conversations about, of work, or you need to go sit down somewhere and be quiet and gather yourself. But knowing that you have a task to do, but you can take a break, it's okay to come back to it. And I think also a mentality or growing up and always thinking about how we make something out of nothing all the time. So that's like a mantra, making something, but in order to do that, you're always thinking of how to make this something. So I think it just extends to that for me, into my work, how to take a canvas, because anything can be a canvas for me. And so to look at that and to know that in the end, it needs to be something. So for me, that's the resilience, to get to the end of things.
Any other questions?
Can I say one more thing?
Okay, this is a sidebar, since no one has any more questions. I just want to say, I grew up in New Bedford, Massachusetts, if you know anything, if you know the story of Frederick Douglass. So I've been surrounded with his image and his story, my whole life. One of the homes that I lived in after I graduated was right next to the house where he used to live. And I just thought that was interesting, that's all.
So I ask a question. I've heard you guys talk about where you draw your inspiration from, what music you listen to, the past events, present events, but do you guys paint yourselves in your work? Like, do you say, if someone says, what's this piece, and you say, well, that's me. That's how I see myself, or that's how I saw. Do you guys paint your individual selves in your pieces?
I typically don't. I did one piece. It was for an exhibition. What do you see when you see me? And again, it started out as an abstract piece. And I think I just added eyes just to give it a humanistic feel, but it was totally abstract. And the story behind that is that because of the abstraction, it was being able to focus in the midst of uncertainty at all times. But generally, I don't, but I was really surprised that that came out and was chosen to be in an exhibition.
I don't typically, but people say that it's always in there. Like, that's you. And it's more maybe because of the colorfulness, maybe. Yeah, I don't typically, more of my twin shows up in the work than I do. And he doesn't like that. It's never intentional. It's more maybe the color palette that maybe people will say reflects who I am.
Well, I've done 4 self-portraits so far. I don't know what that says about me, but, and actually I got a few more that I plan on painting, actually.
No,
I like self-portraits.
I mean, a lot of people don't, like they said, don't paint themselves. They paint everything else, but they don't typically paint themselves in a portrait. So I find that very interesting that you can paint yourself, and that's the depiction of you that you see when you paint.
And there was actually a mural that I did that I put myself in the mural too.
Oh, okay.
I got a question. Out of all the paintings in here, out of the other artists, including yourself, which one jumped out at you and why? Which one was your favorite? Because a lot of times we draw inspiration from other artists. So out of all the paintings in here, do you have a favorite? Or one that speaks to you more than the others?
I have to say, Tanya's work really, really resonated with me. The fact that she was able to have a bird's eye view for that time period, and I love the way that she depicted it and the way that she tells that story. I like that. That is one of my favorites.
I would agree. As I mentioned earlier, I was able to just sort of create a storyline from the individuals that are depicted in the painting, but also the painting that's across, the second from the right. That one has always been a favorite of mine.
The woman, Kiana's.
The middle, one in the middle, one in the middle.
The top hat?
I'm sorry, right, with the top hat.
Kiana's.
That's the piece. Yep.
Yeah, that one I remember from another exhibition that, you know, it's sort of, I don't know, there's something very regal about it, and the individual seems like there's a lot going on that she wants to say, but she's trying to make sure she's saying it in a wise way.
That piece that just showed up. And then it's hard, you know, because I have favorite artists, but I really like David Cassidy's piece on there. I like pieces that have eyes. Yeah.
And colors and layers.
And I have to agree with Marie, these paintings at the top were my favorites. Those were my favorites. And also like Dion's painting over this black and white one. Yeah, that's really nice too.
Well, do the artists, do you have anything else you'd like to share with the audience, or?
Now, I just want to again say thank you for this experience. It has been amazing. It continues to be amazing to be in the presence of greatness. So I love that. I love you guys. That's it.
Well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No,
No, this, you all first, because mine was gonna take it a little bit off track. Okay, take it off. I wanted to ask the curators, a question. Because you all sort of birthed this before you saw any of these images. You had a concept, and so when you get all of this disparate work, tell me about the magic of making it tell the story.
Wow. Oh, so.
Because I'm always enthralled.
And how we, okay, so, I don't think can everybody hear me? Okay, cool. So, for this, we're talking about this particular exhibit,
But this one, let's just focus on this.
So, we started down the path of, first of all, this was hallowed, sacred space.
Mhm.
The historical value of this space is undeniable. So Alicia and I were talking, I said, we have to put together an exhibit that gives honor to these men and to this space. So I started just more of an internet search. I knew about Frederick Douglass. That was easy. But what I didn't know about, I didn't know anything about Isaac Meyer. I don't think anybody knew anything about him unless you were physically in this space. You actually came here, you did some research, boom, they don't know about it. I'm like, this dude, ships passing, all these other places, they come to him for clunking. I don't care, for their ships. And he had established a standard of excellence in spite of the adversities and the limitations and the constraints and the restrictions he had, but he still was able to build a business, operate a business. Then we started digging a little deeper, found out he was really like one of the first to establish a labor union. So all of these things, I'm like, these two guys were wild. Okay, so we gotta make this right. So, and where Vicky is, she's gonna help me out with this other word. I am a wordsmith. I may not be able to say it, but I look for words. I have a bit of a speech impediment because I have multiple sclerosis. So there's certain words that just like go past me. Kujichagulia as my partner crime there. So we looked up Kujichagulia. I actually didn't look up the word. I looked up what does this mean? How is it related to, find a word that would give honor to Frederick Douglass and Isaac Meyer based on what they did. Kujichagulia. Self-determination. These men, if there was a dictionary of black folks' words in their pictures, their names would be there. This was self-determination from Frederick Douglass to Isaac Myers. So originally, when the call for art came out, it was Kujichagulia. And then the comedian was like, they said, well, you can't say that. When I'm assistant, and so let's come up with something else. And I will tell you, the power of AI. I put Frederick Douglass in, I put Isaac Myers in, and Kujichagulia in. And guess what came up? Resilience.
The whole thing?
The whole thing.
Wow.
Big brother's always watching.
Inside out.
Yeah. So I was like, wow. And then it was just a matter of just taking that and crafting and putting in what Kujichagulia means, what Frederick Douglass did, what Isaac Myers did, and what we want the artists in the artwork to reflect. And that's how we came to this. This was the first time I just kind of used the power of AI. I was like burned out. We have done black art in the presence of light. We had, some of the things were a lot easier to come up with something. But this one, it just I needed all of our answers to put their heads together to give us the name that would be befitting of this space, of the artwork, of those gentlemen, who we are as a people, and that's how this was birthed. This is it.
So I'm always fascinated with that because it's part of a cycle. I mean, the artist starts with the brush and the canvas or whatever that creative process is. And then it is part of the cycle of at least an exhibit that it then translates into telling the story that the curator as an artist.
Curator.
Yes, I'm speaking generic, right. The curators as artists and interpreters, and it just fascinates me.
I think as an artist, a lot of times my challenge is trying to put this square in this circle. And I speak in symbols because I create symbols. So when the curators came and said, well, it's going to be resilient, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm like, uh-oh. Until I had to, it made me have to think. It made me be challenged to work toward a reason for what it was you guys were doing. I thank you for that because speaking for myself, sometimes it's needed because it's so easy. I've doodled since the beginning of time, and you doodle and you really don't necessarily know why you're doing what you're doing and why I went this way or why I went that way. But when you put me in a position where now I have to think, that's major. And the show itself and the reason behind it, you're in your own way, whether you realize it or not, continue to push us to continue to keep thinking out the box about what it is that we need to be doing and why it is that we don't be doing.
I could also appreciate what you're saying too, because again, when the call came out, I thought I have to go and look up Isaac Myers because I was not familiar with this gentleman. And learned a lot because it sort of took me down the road to start reading more about the history and then trying to see the overlap of Frederick Douglass and Isaac Myers, and also just really understanding the principles of which led them to be able to do what they had to do, especially in just, the environments in which they came in. And it made me think about the strength, the resilience of what we depend on day to day, but it's nothing compared to the individuals and the roads that they came through. So I do appreciate having that challenge of, okay, because you want to be able to create something that really resonates and aligns with the theme of the exhibition. And for me, I can appreciate that challenge.
I want to bring up, everybody's talking about Tanya's pieces. So it's very interesting. This is not what she submitted.
It's not.
This is not what she submitted. Alicia and I, when we first met Tanya, these are the original pieces that she submitted to be in the marketplace. So when she submitted, it was like, Alicia looking at me, I'm looking at her, I'm like, wait a minute, hold up, let's go back and look at what's in the marketplace. I said, oh my goodness, those are the pieces. So we called her and said, Tanya, we appreciate your submission. They were great works, but we think those would do better for this exhibit. So just being able to have that dialogue and refine it. And Bibi helped us. We were like battling. Oh, this one goes in, oh, that goes up, take this out. And then we show up. And so Poncho's here, she's here, Alicia and I, James. And I always get fussed at. Always. It's too much art. It's way too much in art here. I don't know how we're going to get all this art here. I said, you know what? That is not my problem. Figure it out. Because they are more disciplined than I am when it comes to exhibits. To me, I'm trying to tell a story. And so the story will emerge. And, Belinda and James made it happen to lay it out the way that it did. And we got it all in. We had to use some nicks and Craig had to hang your Moses piece. But it was the first one to come in, and it already had motion. And it's all, so, and I know some artists create just for a particular event. This piece, Caution to the Wind, right? She created just for this exhibit. She was like, this is just what I'm gonna do for this. And Kiana's piece, that is the feature piece, she did that before we even thought about Brazilian sundown. I had to go and look up, it's called Manual. Right, so I had to go and look it up. I knew I had heard it before because I read it in another book. But then when we started curating, it's like, oh, Kim, she put in something different too. We're like, no. So we have these conversations. And this kind of leads me to what I want to say. I don't know if you've ever looked at our logo and you can't kind of figure out what it is. It's actually a partnership between an artist and an organization. So it's actually two people like this. We're in lockstep. We're here to support you, you're here to support us. So that's what that is. It means a partnership. And we use the primary colors. Don't think it means anything else. It's just the colors that were there. So this is always, this is Alicia's vision. This is her happy space. I'm the person singing in the background. I'm doing the behind the scenes thing, but really it's Alicia's passion. This is her passion, collection of art, and just to be involved in that process. And most importantly, Bibi is like the master curator for us, because we've never curated at that level. This is her space. This is her responsibility. And to be invited into this space, we had to show up to show out. We couldn't, because I know people are looking at her. Like, what you got in here? Why you didn't bring something? So we needed to make sure we brought the highest quality artwork, artists into this space. One, to give the men that created the space their proper recognition, but also to show our appreciation to Kavita for selecting us and allowing us to be guest curators.
I want to go back to what Alma said. She's talking about like the whole being a curator is an artistic energy. It's just like, in my opinion, right? It's more than just saying, oh, that's a pretty thing. I put some blue there, and oh, that's blue. Let me put some blue there. It's more than that. It is that ability to create. So in a title, that's a thing. It has to be a title that's going to mean something and draw people. I think that's one piece. And then putting the art together with it. So with Black Art Today, there's an artist roster, and you are familiar with your artists and the pieces in that artist roster. For me as a curator here, I don't stay committed to an artist roster, but that means a whole lot of artists and studio visits and engaging and connecting and forever keeping like a Rolodex of art and people who are and creatives in my brain, so that themes and titles and stories can interplay and do what they do. Like that's what you see here. All of that stuff interplaying because Lisa and Alicia brought it into the studio, and then it can't do what it does till it gets together, right? We just had a giggle because you said, I wonder what the art does when we're not here, right? But every time we walk in here, something's a little crooked. And I'll blame it on the lines. I'm like, there are a lot of lines in this. I'll blame it on the line. Or they catered in here. Somebody bumped the art. Who did it? I don't, but
That piece is at the top, and it moves. Every time we come in here, we have to straighten out a piece. Somebody's piece has moved, and there's no way anybody can reach that top piece that did it.
Stranger fruit, that's why they're.
well, it's the energy of the art talking to each other. I often come and just visit the studio. I come and visit the gallery because I feel like, well, if I don't, the art will feel lonely. I need to just pass through here, but it really is the art being in a collection, in its own collection, the collection of the exhibition, and letting it do what it do, right? What it do, like Ray Charles said, let it do what it do. And it can't, you cannot, I know people who will say, will lay it out before. So by the time they get to a gallery, they know it's this and this and this. And that's an impossible task. I can't ever know till it's in the gallery.
For me, one way to understand the power of this exhibit, come back in here when it's all off the wall. Come back here and then you see all the blank walls and think about how you feel. Because that's a sure sign of what it did to you when you were in here. It's a sure sign of coming in here for the very first time and walking in here and just seeing all this at the same time. It's like you say, then you come back in here and you know you were here, but then you see a piece that's been here. I think that's important. And that just shows you how the event, the show, the exhibit, the artist, the artwork, it breathes. And it also speaks to you. And you understand it even more so when the walls are empty.
And I think the thing that we take for granted is that there's a lot of moving self out of the way from the creatives, the artists, the curatorial effort, there's a lot of moving the human self out of the way. And Yolanda talks about layers, right? I don't even know, in order to have something that that speaks like this is doing, there are so many layers for each individual creative that's touched it, whether that be as a curator or as an artist. And for me, I mean, it's almost like a space where you lift off the earth, where you're no longer grounded. And for me, I straddle that line between artist and that world. Sometimes it's in between artist and curator. And sometimes I'm heavily seated in the curator side, sometimes heavily standing in the artist side. It is like that whole, the magic of letting it do what it do, the magic of whatever comes through you. It's
Let me ask a question
big.
about that.
Mhm.
How many times when you are curating, do you take into account the energy of the artist and the grouping of the art and the comfort after you have placed them?
That's three different questions. Very seriously, that's three different questions, because you always, you take it into, if you give it integrity and honor, then before you ever start a conversation with an artist about a specific event, you are taking them into consideration. You're taking who they are as artists and the integrity they bring to their work and the magic that it unveils for themselves, for the world, for anything they touch. And that's whether it fits into anything or not. So the honoring of the word curator is really about taking care. It's about enfolding and nurturing and protecting artists, art ways, art folk, artistry. It's about all of those things. So to be a curator is about taking care and being in consideration, right? For this gallery, there's nothing frivolous in that comes, at least under my watch, if I haven't been sure. You know, it's an opportunity to give honor and theology to this land that we're standing on as holy grail all the time. So all of now it might be like an uncharacteristic embodiment of the theme, like melancholy in the music, right? Like that which Karen and Tracy were artists for that exhibition, but that was about like the music, the melancholy of standing firm inside of COVID and still standing while so many others were lost. It was about, like, in order to do that, there's music in that, there's melody in that, but there's so much melancholy in it. How does that work? What's the work that comes through an artist or through creativity in that messaging, right? So a little bit abstract, like much of the work on the wall, abstract, and an opportunity for people to visit and see what they see and see what the collection does for them. I think that there's some caretaking in the themes, not just naming, not just kind of randomly naming things, but just there's some caretaking and some consideration in that. And the third one was something.
About placement. Right, because if you are factoring in the artist, and then you are saying this artist energy matches this artist energy, this artist may be placed next to that one because they have similar energies. And so the artist.
Yeah. But before, like for the Black Art Today Foundation, that is part of what we curate artists first. That's first. If they're on our roster or they're with our visiting or returning artists we partner with, they have been vetted because we have watched them. We watch Instagram, we watch Facebook, we go to exhibits. I'm telling you, I'm watching. You have to move a certain way. Because we're going in spaces that we've never been in before. Neiman Marcus. So if I'm taking you to Neiman Marcus, you bet it's gonna have that mama speech. You go in there, you better act like you got some home training, don't touch nothing, you know, all that extra stuff. I don't need, and so we watch artists, and our roster, you'll see our roster is a more mature artist, regardless of where they are in their career, but as individuals, they're mature, they're professional, they're civil, they know how to act. And because we always want to put our best face foot forward, because somebody's always judging, always looking. We go into Neiman Marcus and act like nutcases and show up with a bell and ringing the bell doing an exhibit. That brings, it brings unnecessary attention.
That's
It
right.
is what it is. No, you cannot break your bell.
I do have one.
I know you do. But don't come to
And we already got one.
Yeah, bring out wood, tail fire. Hear you. I'm mad. But we watch artists. I've watched certain artists and how they conduct themselves, especially on social media. And I see one particular artist, no name mentioned, talented. But I've seen how they have behaved. I can't bring you into certain areas. So our first thing is to curate the artists, because the art will reflect them, because they're going to give a higher standard, higher quality. And we're going, like, again, we're invited into spaces that we've never been before. Gallery Beach, Bethesda. It has never, ever had an all-black artist curated by all white. Never. BWI, all black women, thanks to Alma. That was our first. We're going back to 2024. Black and brown men, that's all that's gonna be in that show. We're being invited to places that we just typically have not. The comptroller's office, we were the first under this administration to hang in the halls of the comptroller's office. So that is why we curate artists first, the art will come.
But then beyond just getting them in the cohort, when you have a specific exhibit, you then curate.
And we
the
curate to
artists.
that. We have everybody on the roster has an opportunity to submit, but everybody does not get in, period. We've had, it was like 3 or 4 artists that did not make the show.
I think it's important that you all have a relationship with the artists. One of the things that I've always said as an artist, that, I can kind of pick and choose whose house my work goes in. Because to me, your home is your spiritual temple. So if you bring my work into your spiritual temple, it's the greatest compliment you can give me. Because it is important. You're important, your home is important. It's the same thing that I see. If you have a relationship, as you say, you search and seek and look and see what they're doing, but it's a relationship that's developed with the curators to say, you don't even have to ask me if you want me to do something to put in the show. It's already understood. Right. And I think that part is important. I already know that if you guys want to do a show, I already know what the caliber of the show is going to be. It's not even stressful. So that's where that relationship comes back and forth, but we've known each other forever. But even with me seeing you bring in some of the artists that I did not know, they're already vetted because you brought them in. So you already tell me the kind of people, the kind of artists, and the kind of, person that's in art that's coming through the door. And I think that's a really big piece, because whether we all know each other or we don't know each other, what we do know is you're here because you're supposed to be.
And just to speak a little bit about, I'm not a curator, but one of the things that I can appreciate is
and you made the music reference, that you're the conductor, you know, and if you've ever been, what do they call it, the person who puts the horns and then this and then this, yeah, like all the layers of it, that it's something magical when you can, I've been in shows where you walk in and you see everybody stays in one area because there's one piece that, you know, kind of attracts people, but they didn't balance the show to naturally move people, make you want to move through the space, right? And I guess that's part of the magic of curating, like you know how to place, somebody mentioned energies matching or whatever, but you know how to place things that keeps people moving into the space. Like they put a certain piece way over there and they put different, you know, so there's a way to do that. And I think, like you're saying, like knowing your artist, knowing what you got, what you're working with, the space that you have put in every time you put together a layered show. I keep using layers because that's my thing. But you put it in such a way that you can't help but to keep discovering something new or wanting to see something new and feeling all of that energy. And I think that's a really beautiful thing about what I'm seeing in this space. Just coming in, like you said, with lots of people in here, with no people in, you see different things keep emerging. And I think that's a gift of great curating skills.
I just want to say that since becoming a part of Black Art Today, one of the things that really attracted me to the organization was the level of respect that they show the artists and getting to know, you know, the artists. So I never felt that they were trying to send you a certain way. It was always, you know, you're the artist. And that meant a lot to me. And trust. I mean, I think that also is well deserved because you guys, the level of integrity that I have witnessed is superb. And I think as a new artist, I know I'm lucky to be included.
We're blessed to have all the artists that we're blessed. We know we are. We're very fortunate. And like I said, some of you weren't here before. I will stand on this. I'll stand on this. I think we have the strongest cold heart collective, whatever you want to call it, in the state of Maryland. I would put us up against anybody because we are about to go up against another group of artists.
In another state. In another state.
No, here in Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah. We had to do a little bit of negotiation, but we're gonna talk about that later. But yeah, we're going up with you. Ready? We had to negotiate it. We were at the table with them. This was this past summer. We're like, no. Our artists, I guarantee you don't have to make a special selection. We don't need to have a little set aside over here. Any of our artists can go up against any of your artists, and they will be in that show. And
let's get to that. So let's
So that unless anybody has any other questions of the artists of Lee or Alicia. Alicia is we're like Penn and Teller. You figure out which one is Penn and which one is
We got it.
But the magic happens. She's, you know, when we come in here after I've got like 500 pieces of art, they gotta figure out where they're gonna put it. I just sit back and this is another person, key component of any exhibit is your installer.
Yes.
James Murphy, hands down, and his wife Belinda are masters at this. This is his. What were you doing?
No, I want, when you finish.
Yeah.
Don't stop.
Because you can have all the great art in the world, but if it's installed shabby and it's not lined up properly, and the dimensions today, it's not coherent, it doesn't matter what you got in there. It's gonna look like some crap. He is the master of making that happen. So that's, we have a standing band, we have a standing caterer, and we have a standing installer.
Yeah.
That's who we work with.
James, I would say this, it is a luxury that most curators don't have unless they're big box curators. So of course, the BMA or the Walters or any huge museum, the Brooklyn Academy, there's an installation team. There are art handlers that move, big companies that move art from state to state. And, there's guidance that's attached to that, and of course, lots of money, right? But as I think what we do is huge, but yet in the big scheme of things, it's very small. So it is a great luxury to be able to depend on an installer. I was taught to install myself. So, and I know what to do. I know how to climb, I know all those things. But to not have to do it, to be able to have somebody that has a great eye, an artistic vision, and is also a creative, to be able to do that, there's no, that is such a gift. It is such a gift. And quite honestly, it's made me quite late. It's like, I don't never have to do never, right
Yeah,
there.
they roll up in the air, like, we put some stuff over here.
Yeah, we're a gangster team. Collectively, this is like, no. Lisa says state of Maryland. I easily say Mid-Atlantic, only because I can't really talk about what's outside, but we might even roll beyond that, right? I think that this whole situation is quite gangster, right? It's quite strong. It's very strong.
This concludes the portion of the artist talk. We want to thank everyone for playing. Oh, and most important, Living Classrooms. This is an organization that manages multiple spaces in Fells Point. They do a little bit of everything, but this is their building. They're another nonprofit, and this space was intentional. They give this space to Black and African American artists.
I am thankful to Living Classrooms for trusting me with this space since 2016. I am thankful for Living Classrooms for listening to me as I've said, this is a space that must tell a social justice and resilience story in everything that goes on. And that it is about the art that is through and of and by contemporary African American excellence. And so that's what you see on these walls again and again and again and again. Don't be strangers. Keep on coming. Thank you, Living Classrooms, for being an excellent sponsor and for fostering this vision. Ashe.